Hey everyone, welcome to episode 20 of Sunday Scaries Skill Sessions. I've gotten a lot of requests to talk about social anxiety, so I'm going to dive into that today. But this one is going to build a little bit off of episode 15 where I talked about the hand model of the brain. So if you haven't seen that one, make sure you go check it out so that you can get the most out of this video that you can. So when it comes to anxiety, social or otherwise, our brain is taking notice of the things that we do that help us survive. We're very survival driven. And so our brain's always going to be checking things out of, okay, what did we do to survive this day? And the way that can actually work against us and increase our anxiety is if we get into a pattern of avoidance. So if you are really nervous about something and you start to avoid it at all costs, your brain notices, oh, she avoided that, and then we survive. So it starts to associate avoidance and survival. So then what it's going to do is the next time it wants you to survive again. So it is going to increase your anxiety even higher because your brain is thinking, oh, well, she avoided it because she felt anxious, and because she avoided it, we survived. So now it's going to make you even more anxious to ensure that you will avoid that thing and as a result survive. So that can be really problematic because now something that might have been just a little bit scary, the more you avoid it, becomes a really big fear or a really big source of anxiety for you. So when it comes to those sorts of anxieties and fears, so socializing is a big example of this. Exposure work is really, really important because it allows you to show your brain that rather than avoiding this situation, that you can also approach it and survive too. And the more you do that, your brain starts to catch on. Oh, we don't need to make her anxious because we don't need to avoid this thing. We can actually interact with this thing, engage with this thing, and still survive. It's safe. That's basically what's going on in the brain. So where some people can kind of get this wrong is that they try to just throw themselves in the deep end almost. So over approaching something. Let's say I'm really afraid of public speaking. That actually is a really hard thing for me that I've worked a lot on. These videos have helped. But so let's say that that's a really big fear. I'm not going to want my first experience public speaking to be a keynote address to thousands of people because that's going to be too scary and it's not going to give me a high chance of success. So rather than over approaching something by doing the scariest thing you can think of, you want to ease yourself into those fears. So maybe instead I might do an Instagram live with someone, or I might schedule a speech for a classroom or something like that. So thinking small because you want to give yourself the chance to succeed. The more you experience it, approach it, have success, and survive, your brain is going to start dropping that anxiety because it learns that you can handle this thing. Okay, so exposure to the thing you're afraid of is really important. So if you have social anxiety, the worst thing you can do for yourself is start to decline invitations, start to go home early, start to do all these things where you're avoiding that social experience because you're teaching your brain that it's as scary as you thought and that if you approach it, you could die. Your brain literally thinks in those kinds of terms of survival, life and death. So you don't want to avoid social situations. Now, that being said, when you're going to approach the social situation, you want to have some skills to keep yourself calm because again, you want to give yourself a chance for success. And if you have tools to keep your body calm, that increases your chance of success. So if you remember the model of the brain where when you get super anxious and you flip your lid, and at that point, that prefrontal cortex, remember that's the fingernails here, when that is offline, your brain's not functioning the way that it usually does. So all of the higher level executive functioning that we usually have is not available to us if we have flipped our lid and we are super anxious. So if that happens in a social situation, you're probably not going to do great socially because you can't think clearly, you can't focus, you can't pay attention, you can't concentrate. So that's not a recipe for success in a social situation. So what you want to make sure that you can do is something to calm your body, to bring that prefrontal cortex back online. I talk all about this in episode 15, so make sure you go watch that if you don't know what this means. So examples of that are breathing techniques. So one of the ones I've shared in videos before is the square breath, where you breathe in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, hold for 4, and you repeat that. That breath work sends a signal to your brain that you're calm, because when you get super anxious, your breathing starts to get really fast. And so if you can control your breath and slow it down, it lets your brain know, oh, okay, we're all right, we're safe. So breath work's a really good one, because you can do that socially without people really knowing that you're doing that. Progressive muscle relaxation is another one that I've also talked about more in depth in videos, where you tense certain muscle groups really tight for about 5 seconds, and then you release all of that tension. So the way you can do that in a social situation, rather than going through your entire body, you might want to just focus on areas of extreme tension. So for me, that's my shoulders usually. So what I would do is tense them up really, really, really tight as I can for about 5 seconds, and then let that go. And you're gonna feel that tension leave your body. Your brain then notices that release of tension, starts to get the message of, oh, okay, we're all right, we're wanting to relax. So lots of different techniques to soothe yourself. I always talk about ice. If you have ice in a social situation, that's great. The 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 skill, which I've shared in other videos, that's also a really great one socially, because people don't know you're doing that either. So first things first is soothing your body in some way so that all this important brain function comes back online. Okay. So once you have that, now you want to start to examine your thoughts. As a refresher, if you're here and you're trying to think your way out of your problem, probably not going to be super successful. Okay. Because the thing in your brain that helps you do that is offline. So you want to calm your body first so that you have the ability to problem solve, the ability to think deeper. And so once you do that, then you want to start to examine the thoughts that you're having. So social anxiety it has that label. And sometimes when you label yourself as, oh, I have social anxiety, it can become a thing where it feels like, oh, this is just who I am. I don't have any control over this. But really what social anxiety is just a fear of being judged or evaluated. So when you can name that accurately, so if you start to feel, okay, I'm socially anxious, name it more accurately by saying, this is fear. I'm afraid that people are judging me right now. Dan Siegel, who is a psychiatrist, I believe, and maybe also a neuroscientist, talks about, he uses the phrase, name it to tame it. So there's something that happens in our brain when we name the emotion that we're experiencing, just by naming it accurately, that does something to our brain where it's soothing. So just by saying, this is fear, I'm afraid people are judging me right now, that alone is also going to help you calm down a little bit. So you want to name that, this is fear. Then once you have that awareness of what's really going on, you want to start to look for some evidence. So if the fear is people are judging me, people are evaluating me, this is a cognitive behavioral skill called examine the evidence. So you want to start looking around, okay? Are people pointing at me? Are people staring at me? Are people whispering in my direction? No, they're not. Half of them are on their phone. Half of them are talking to other people. So you're like scanning your environment to see if there's any evidence to support that fear. And almost always you're going to find in social situations, no one is judging you the way that you might feel in your mind. So from top to bottom, first thing when it comes to social anxiety is don't avoid social situations, because if you do, your brain is going to get you in a cycle of anxiety where every time you go into a social situation, it's going to rev up your anxiety because it thinks that's what it needs to do to help you survive. So you want to start slowly, gently approaching social situations in a way that feels like you can have success. So you probably don't want to go to a big gathering where you don't know anyone. small groups where you feel a little more comfortable, people who you're close with, and practice that until your anxiety starts to decrease. Then you can go to the next level up, where maybe you go to a party with a friend or a couple friends that you know, but there's also some new folks there. And so you just keep building on that until you get to the point where maybe you could go to a party where you didn't really know anybody and you'd still feel comfortable. So you slowly build that experience, that evidence, and that reassurance in your brain that you can approach this stuff and still survive. So exposure to socialization, when you're then exposing yourself to social situations, doing something to calm your body. So there's tons of videos that I have around techniques that you can do to calm your body. You want to do that first. Once you feel like you've started to soothe yourself and that all this functioning is available to you again, then you really want to examine those thoughts and remind yourself, okay, I'm telling myself people are judging me right now. That's what I'm actually afraid of. And let me check that out. Are people actually judging me? Look for the evidence. So if you can do those three things, exposure, calm your body, examine your thoughts, then you are going to be able to overcome that social anxiety without a doubt.